Hey, this is Ricky from Bento Systems, and I'm here to give you a quick tour and demo of the platform. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to touch on a few key concepts while we move through the application. And what we're looking at right now on the screen is the first concept, which we call a space. And so this is our headquarters space. This is, if you can imagine a pyramid, this would be the top of that pyramid and has access to everything else underneath it. So this is our headquarters. We also have other spaces like My Stuff and Teams. And Teams are just another version of a space that allows us to take an organization chart, an org chart, team chart, and map that into the system. We use team spaces. They can be created and nested underneath each other. So that way, again, we can take a fairly complex org chart and map Bento to that. Another thing that you'll see throughout the system when you look at a space is this concept here of a dashboard. And dashboards are ways to control the visual layout of data for the space members. In this case, again, we're looking at headquarters, but this same concept will apply to My Stuff, to Teams, and actually also to projects. So a dashboard here, all of these app views or box views are drag and droppable, so we can change the order and positioning of them. They also each have settings, so we can change the name, we can change the width, we can change other settings like the default tags and things like that that are applied. We also have the option to add a pretty healthy set of other app views or box views. Some are lists or tables. Others can be more visual, like calendar views, month views, week views, and even things like charts and graphs can be added as box views to different space dashboards. One last concept that you'll see with dashboards is that you can actually have multiple dashboards per space. So for instance, if you needed on the sales team to have one tracking sales team projects versus sales team tasks or something like that, or just contacts, you can actually set up multiple dashboards to help organize the visual layout of that data. Another concept in the system that you'll see is this bar here. This is a pretty important bar, and what it does is it displays the pre-built applications or pieces of functionality that are available at a certain space. So again, we're still at our headquarters. So this is a list of the tools that we have available to us at our headquarters. We can click here and see the full exhaustive list. And what these are pre-built pieces of functionality. So inside documents, this tool here at the headquarters level allows our admins to go in and create different templates for documents. These documents could be things like contracts, client contracts, invoice templates, employee handbooks for onboarding new team members and new staff members. Other things like contacts. This is a standard contact management system where you can track contacts, clients, and vendors, and allows you to link that information to other things in the system like projects. We have a files tool that allows you to upload documents, upload PDFs. You can also link out to Google Documents and Google Spreadsheets and things like that to help you and your team stay organized. And then using this plus button here, you can actually add, you can select from a very large list of other pre-built functionalities and add those to whatever space you need them to be a part of. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and go to our sales team example. So we're now looking at our sales team space, and conceptually we see our dashboard, we've got our tags, and we've got some managers here. We're also, if you noticed, this toolbar up here also shifted and changed what was available. And that's because when we set up this sales team, whoever set it up actually changed out the tools that are available to the rest of the team. So this looks like a more of a classic list of things that should be available to a sales team versus, I'm going to go ahead and open up the development team. You can see again that the list of tools has shifted, and they are generally going to be more specific to that space. Another concept that we'll see throughout the system here, these tags. Tags are pretty straightforward, but they're a way for us to control who has access to information and how information is shared throughout the system. So what we see initially are tags for individual users, pretty straightforward, and all this means is that Brandon has access to this space. We also see here, this is a team tag. So the research and development is actually another team or another space within this system, and was given in its entirety, was given access to the development team. So everyone who has access to the research and development team now also has access to this development team. And then we also have things like this, like custom tags. These are tags that aren't directly linked to anything else in the system, but by adding them to pieces of data in the system, we can use them for filtering. Adding new tags is pretty straightforward. You just come in here and start typing. Select the tag you want to add. If it's a new one, go ahead and create new, and it's added. Now we also use tags to help us flow information through the system. And this will make a little bit more sense when we get into some of the other concepts throughout the system. Another one of those major concepts here is workflows. And we see a little bit of that here. I'm going to actually jump to a project list. And what we're going to focus on is this status column. As you can see, this status button is indicating the current state of each project. We can see how long ago each of these was set just by hovering. We can click and see which direction it can move. So this one can only go backwards. This one can go forward and backwards. And the best way to really visualize this and explain it is by clicking up here on the board view. What we're looking at, this is also a concept here, where we can click, anytime you're looking at a list, you can actually click any of these buttons to view that list in a different way, whether it's a calendar, list table, or board. But what we're going to do now is we're going to look at our board view. And what this does is it visually helps us kind of understand and digest what a workflow is. And as you see, it's really just a series of states or stages that a unit of work can move through. Now I say unit of work because this concept of workflows doesn't just apply to projects. It can be applied to basically any other pre-built piece of functionality in our system. So contacts, projects, documents, files, those sorts of things can also have custom workflows attached to them and can be moved through those workflows. I'm going to pull up a different type of project because conceptually we can have many types of workflows, different types of workflows for different types of things. In this case, we're looking at projects, but each of these kinds of projects can have their own specific workflow. So this is great when you want to separate things out from, let's say, a sales team project versus more of an internal implementation project. Each of those could have different workflows depending on the type of project that it is. And editing these workflows is also very straightforward. So we're looking at client projects. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that workflow. Now what we see is a list of the different stages in that workflow. By using these plus buttons, I can add different stages at any point. And I can also click on these stages, change the name, and we can use another conceptual piece of the platform here that we call actions. And what we do with these actions can actually run. They will run when a unit of work has successfully transitioned into this stage. So again, we're looking at projects. So basically, when a project moves from event storming to proposal, we can trigger certain things to happen. And there's two kinds of things that we can trigger. We can trigger internal system things like creating task lists and assigning them out to teams or individual users. We can add tags for different stakeholders that need to be notified at different stages. We can remove tags, so if a stakeholder only needs to be notified early on in the process and then not again towards the end. And then we can also trigger things that happen outside of the system. So if there are other third-party systems that need to be notified when certain things happen to projects, we can set that up. We can do that in one of two ways. We can use our Zapier integration, which allows us to continue that point-and-click configuration feel in the Zapier environment, or we do offer a more traditional API surface for developers. Another concept available to us in the system is templating. And templating is very powerful because it allows us to create standardized versions of projects, tasks, and other units of work throughout the system. Pieces of standardization include documents, document templates, default task lists that need to be set every time a project is created. We can also standardize other things like the types of tools that are attached to a project or a contact by default. And we can also standardize the dashboard layouts for projects depending on the template. One last concept I'd like to touch on in the Bento platform is sets. Now, sets is one of our more complicated concepts, but can easily be explained when we talk about used car lots. So most businesses have a unit of work. Most of the time this is called a project, a job, maybe even an invoice or an event. But sometimes a unit of work is harder to define and may not look just like what we call a project. So a used car lot is a perfect example of this. They generally have a unit of work, but that unit of work is a car. And so what we can do in that case is use our sets tool to help us data model what a car is and what a unit of work is. And so I've got an example here that I've started. I'm going to open this one up. And you can see we've got a couple of these things that are new. But let's say, these were blank. I can come in here and using the sets tool, I can actually design what this unit of work looks like. So I added a couple properties, and you can see I can click into this property, and right now it's a line of text. I can actually set it so that maybe it's an address. Okay. So we'll save that. And instead of property, we want to call it the lot location. Maybe you've got multiple lots at this used car lot. And let's say we wanted to change this. Got a lot of other options here. Right? You have a rating, just a basic rating if we want. Again, I'm just adding things just as an example here. But that's essentially the process that was used to create these other fields up here. We added properties, gave them names, changed the definition of what they are. So in this case, there's a drop-down. We can add other options here. We can edit the current options. This is just a text field. We can have dates, date and time if we need it. We can have pricing, different price options. And then we can actually attach workflows to these sets. So in this case, if I were to click here and hit Edit Workflow, you can see we've kind of already started creating this in a previous example. But what we can do is we can use the same workflow editor to specify what a workflow is for, in this case, a car. Now once we've created this, and again, we've got all of our same options, so we can set actions and triggers here for each of these. Once we've set all this up and we're happy with the way that it looks, we can come back to, let's say, our sales team. I'm going to go back to our sales team. And because I created that tool, that application in the system called Cars, it's now going to be available as an option to be added. We've got some options here. Maybe we don't need to see it in calendar, so I can go ahead and remove that option. You can save this. And now, as you can see, we've got Cars as a tool or an application here at this level, at the sales team level. And our sales team members can come in here, create new cars, they can manage their cars, view them in a nice Kanban or Agile board. and manipulate their data that way. This also creates a data API surface for developers, so they can now interface using our API. They can interface with this car object. So I know I touched on a lot of concepts here in the Bento platform. There's a lot more to it, but I do hope that the concepts we talked about today help you understand a little bit more about the different types of tools we offer and the way that they can be put together. Overall, at the end of the day, the best thing to understand is that we are building a platform for builders. We're building tools for people that think in processes and think in maps, and giving them the ability, providing them with tools to get those maps out of their head so that way they can standardize the work inside their organizations. Thank you.